All right, I'm going to show you how to set up a turntable of your 3D designs here in Blender. There's a couple ways to do this. One would be animating the object that you're trying to present and rotating the geometry itself in 360 degrees, and then exporting out a little video of that. But with something like this, where we have kind of a lot of mirror modifiers and an instance that's reflected on this side, if we rotate the actual geometry itself, things might slide around and look weird. So we're going to try to avoid all that by doing this another way, and that is rotating a camera around the geometry by 360 degrees. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to do that. So first things first, I've created an empty object, and that's right here. And all I did to create that is Shift A, empty, and I've just chosen plain axes. Okay, and you want that right in the center, right in the middle of everything. It's okay if it's vertically up or down, but it has to be kind of right in the center of what you're trying to present. And then of course I've created a new camera, and that's this right here, and you can move this around anywhere you want. And that'll kind of be the starting point for your animation. I've just chosen the center. And what you want to do is parent the camera to that empty. So the way to do that is you actually select the empty first, then hold Shift and select the camera, then hit Control P and set parent to object. Okay. So now we have, and you can see this kind of represented by that dotted line there. We have a camera parented to the empty. So any changes we make to the empty, and the camera should follow it around, right? So if I move it around, they're moving together as one kind of group. And additionally, if we rotate that empty, especially on the Z-axis, so I'll do R and then Z, we should get something like this, which is what we want. So that's looking good. Don't forget you can move the camera around still, and you won't affect this relationship. So if we wanted to zoom out a bit further, we could totally do that. And then we could click on the empty and kind of see if anything's being cut or cropped. And I think something like that is completely fine. So now we kind of have this set up. So let's set up the animation. So I'll unfurl this menu down here and switch it over from the shader editor to the video sequencer. But we have a little timeline here. And what we want to do is set two keyframes for the empty, one that's kind of placed right here, and then one that's rotated around the Z-axis by 360 degrees. So in order to do that, select the empty, and the hotkey for creating a new keyframe is just the letter I. And you get this insert keyframe menu, and I'll choose, honestly, probably rotation is the only one that matters for this, but just in case, let's do location, rotation, and scale. So I'll select that, and I'll create a keyframe at the timeline that you're on, which right now is 0, 0. So that's stage one. Then we'll scrub this kind of timeline a little bit further along, somewhere around there. And maybe a little farther. And what we want to do now is hit R and then Z and rotate it by 360 degrees. So you can just type the numbers 360 and it'll rotate all the way around, and click to accept. And then hit I again and insert another keyframe at that place. So if you scrub this timeline around, you'll see we are rotating all the way around, even though it looks the same from, at the beginning of the animation and the end of the animation. And you can actually play that with your play hotkey. I've, of course, set mine to Shift Spacebar. So we can kind of see that in action there. And we probably want to cut off the animation at the end here because it is, it's a little bit too long. So you can adjust the timeline length by going over here to the to these properties. So this little printer menu icon, and this frame range is what you want to adjust. So you can just lower that range. You can see that at the bottom there. So let's just find the exact spot we want. So it should be right after we get to the end, and the animation will restart. So let's double check that. That feels about right. And yeah, we're pretty much ready to export an animation. So real quick before I do that, I just want to mention I'm going to do it with this gray model, and you can hide overlays again by clicking this. And you could totally, do this with a final lighting setup. That might take a little bit extra time to render, but you can also just do a viewport presentation like this, and I'll just show you that. But you can totally do both. So in order to do this, what we want to do is make sure our export animation settings are correct. So over here in the printer, I've just set the output. So I've set that to desktop. So you just click this folder and choose your desktop. Next, file format. We don't want PNG for this. We actually want, and you can try some other ones, but for me, the one that's worked best is this option, FFmpeg video. And next, under encoding, let's reset that to MPEG-4. And you can obviously try, other export options, but this is just a quick MP4 video that we're going to export. Video codec H.264, all this should be all good by default, so we're not going to mess with anymore. And all I'm going to do is make sure overlays are hidden, and then I'll go over to View and Viewport Render Animation. So remember, a viewport render image is just kind of like a screenshot of what you are seeing in your viewport. Viewport render animation is the exact same thing. So if I select that, we'll kind of start getting that animation being rendered, and it should be fairly quick because we're just doing a viewport render. And you can actually see the frames that are being that it's on right now. There are those little numbers on my cursor, and I don't totally remember if we had over 100 frames, but hopefully that that won't take too long with just a viewport render. Now, if you wanted to do the final lighting in this kind of a turntable, I would suggest switching over to Eevee, just because that would probably take forever with cycles, and then you'd probably have to adjust your lighting a little bit to get it to work with Eevee. But generally speaking, I just find these kind of gray model renders to be pretty good for just presentation and showing off the model from all angles. So we'll let this finish up here. Looks like it's almost done. And here I've just opened up that exported file on my desktop, and let's just play that to make sure everything's looking good. That is about what we wanted. So that's kind of a quick way to set this up. You can also, by the way, do this with materials on. So all you have to do is go into material view in your viewport and just do this exact same process, which is another way of presenting.